Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the USA Today Network Tennessee and the Tennessean. Welcome to the Nashville School Board Forum. We want to thank the 9 candidates who are here today, who are competing in 5 of 9 seats that are up for election in the August 6th primary election. And I want to also thank and acknowledge the local organizations who have helped make this forum possible, including Conexión Americas, the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, Nashville Now, Great City, Great Schools Coalition, Nashville Propel, and the National Public Education Foundation. Thank you to our audience who's watching. While there will be no opening or closing statements, I do want to introduce each candidate, and feel free to wave as I call on you. So first, School District 1 candidates, Barry Barlow, Dr. Sharon Gentry, Robert Taylor. And now for District 3 candidates, Brian Hubert, Emily Masters. District 5 is Christian Buggs, who is unopposed and is the incumbent. District 7 is Frida Player Peters, also unopposed and the incumbent. And District 9, Russell Ann Bradbury and Abigail Tyler. And thank you for the mask. That's a great example there. What I want to do is ask each of the candidates the same question to start out. And for the candidates themselves, we'll be seeing a timekeeper, Jeremy Harrell, thank you very much, who will give you the 45 seconds. You'll have green, and then yellow, and then red is to stop, and I will politely ask you to end your remarks. So we're going to start in the order that I mentioned, and I'll continue to repeat that as we get there. But the first question is this. What motivated you to run for the Metro Nashville Public Schools Board of Election? And let's start with Barry Barlow, District 1.
Well, the main reason that I'm running is because I have served, I like to say, behind the scenes for more than a decade, and have been just a super involved parent with the district. And so I thought it might be a good time to just go ahead and try to get on the board, so that the many things that I've learned, that I will be able to use those things in a different way to actually bring what I like to say, a great education to every child every day. So that's probably the main reason, because I've just been doing this work for a long time, serving the transition team, a part of the STEAM Advisory Council, just been a part of MNPS Next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barlow. Let's go to Dr. Sharon Gentry, please.
Thank you, David. After 12 years on the board, where we find ourselves today with all the issues and the challenges that are facing us, from reopening to identifying and closing the gaps, not only to access, but to learning, it's going to take all hands on deck. And I think an individual with a myriad of experience, not only having on the board with that historical knowledge, but the experience with problem solving and strategic thinking, in project management, managing remote resources, managing limited resources, and all of that I have experience with, that I've always brought to the table, and to be a vital part of the conversations that are happening and the strategic decision making, so that we do what's best for children each and every day. And so I look forward to continuing to leverage those skills and talents and bring them to bear for where we are today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gentry. Robert Taylor?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Plazas. Because I know that I possess the skills necessary to provide quality leadership on the board. I've also worked as an MNPS employee. I'm a parent in MNPS schools. I'm a parent of a District 1 student. And I've also partnered with our schools as a community partner. And I understand that, that it is an all hands on deck moment. We've known that for many, many years now, but for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. And so I wanted to take leadership in my community to make sure that those things happen that are necessary to turn our schools around.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn to District 3 candidates. Brian Hubert, please.
For me, it's just a general sense of civic duty. I wanted to see positive change on this board. As a Metro graduate and as someone with skin in the game with some children in Metro schools, I wanted to see this system get better. And I've been frustrated with the lack of progress, and I want to put students first. I want to see that the board has to answer to 80,000 bosses, and those are the students. So positive change.
Thank you very much. Emily Masters.
Thank you. I am running because I'm passionate passionate about supporting students and empowering teachers to do their best by giving them the tools that they need for success. I'm an 18-year volunteer in Metro Public Schools since before I even had children of my own. I'm a 10-year MMPS parent. I was a PTO leader at an elementary school, Dan Mills Elementary, here in my district for 7 years. And I learned a lot about being a leader and bringing parents and teachers together to make positive change. And I just want to follow that passion even further by serving on the school board.
Thank you very much. Now, District 5 with Christian Buggs, please.
Hi, yes, and thank you for having us here, David. After having graduated from an MMPS school and then teaching in MMPS for 6 years, I wanted to, well, I didn't know or didn't understand what it meant for a school to be taken over by the state. I wanted to really learn to engage and empower teachers and community members so that they felt involved in part of the process. But then after being on the school board for 2 years, I became pregnant with this little guy. And having seen the inequities that are already in my district and around our system, I wanted to make sure that I elevated that conversation and make sure that I bring in those who are disenfranchised or who haven't typically been heard from. And more than anything, though, just the engaging and empowering everyone in the community to make sure that they understand our budget woes and that they understand optional advocacy routes.
Thank you, Ms. Buggs. Now we'll turn to District 7, Frida Player Peters.
I believe education is the great equalizer, and I believe it's the community's ability to educate our children. And also, I believe a very unique perspective working inside Metro government within the mayor's office and my relationship with the Metro Council that I can bridge the communication, articulate the vision of Metro schools and why they should be invested in fully between the executive, the legislative branch, and being on the board, and make sure that we work more in synchronous together to make sure we leverage all the resources our community can.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move to School Board District 9, Russell Ann Bradbury, please.
David, I'm Russell Ann Bradbury, and I'm a working parent, and I've lived in District 9 since 2008. I am a former educator and also a trained social worker, and I have a lot of experience in nonprofits in town. I'm someone that is going to push the envelope. I'm going to ask the tough questions, and right now tonight we're going to acknowledge the crisis. So I want you guys to all recognize everyone up here for the courage that they're giving to getting involved in civics. It is a tremendous honor to be running for school board because that is one of the best, most integrity-laden jobs you can have. So I'm really excited. And again, I'm Russell Ann Bradbury. Please get on board. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Abigail Tyler.
Hi, I'm running because education is the work of my life. I grew up here in Nashville. I went through Metro schools, K through 12. I was a Metro teacher for over a decade. My kids are in Metro schools now. So I've seen the system from a lot of different perspectives. And I've really had to understand how the policies that the board set play out in the classroom as a teacher and for the students, and also the way the parents perceive it. And so I feel like I have a valuable voice that I can add to that conversation. So I clearly have the heart for education, but what sets me apart is that I have the knowledge of how the system works. So I want to put that knowledge to work for our kids and our teachers.
Thank you very much. For the next several questions, we're going to be splitting this up by candidates by district. So the next question will go to candidates in District 1 and 3. What do you believe are the primary and most critical roles and responsibilities of a school board member? And let's start with District 1 with Barry Barlow.
So the primary role is to evaluate the director of schools. But I believe along with that, you've got to be a person that is involved with all the stakeholders that are a part of your community, as well as I think you have to be so familiar with those folks that they know your voice as well as your face. I also think that you have got to be involved with the mayor's office because that's where the funding starts at. So you've got to be a person that can collaborate with the mayor's office to get the funding to do the things we need to do, as well as being at least familiar with those persons at the state doing the same kind of work. So I think that along with being involved with.
Thank you, sir. Sharon Gentry, please.
Absolutely. So definitely the evaluation of the director of schools, setting the budget, and ensuring that we have policies that support the mission of educating students and providing equity across the district. Those are the things that we're focused in, and those are the things that the meetings should be continuously wrapped around. Definitely leveraging those relationships with those other legislators on the both local and state level when it comes to issues that prohibit us to move forward and provide that level of equity. Definitely engaging with local legislators around the budget and state legislators around a myriad of the policies that exist there that make it just difficult for us on a daily basis to do what's best for kids every day.
Thank you very much. Robert Taylor?
So the MNPS board policy manual is pretty clear about what the board functions are. And so the first function is policy oversight, which is overseeing the director of schools and ensuring that they're implementing procedures to accomplish the goals that we have for the school system. The second one is educational planning, requiring that we get data, information that allows us to continually improve the education program for our students. Next is fiscal planning. And so that's basically managing the budget, making sure that we're utilizing public funds in the best way possible to ensure our outcomes. And the last and sometimes overlooked role is promotion. The school board member is supposed to be promoting the schools and involving
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Planning process.
Again, for District 3 also has this question: what do you believe are the primary and most critical roles and responsibilities of a school board member? Brian Hubert.
The board has to hire and manage a director of schools. It's extremely important. I think right now I would emphasize supporting that director in the time that we are in. We need to ensure continuous improvement in schools to make sure that there's continuing to be progress and evaluation. There needs to be an establishment of budget priorities that allow the school to be fiscally sound and stable, and there needs to be an evaluation of that regularly. And then also there needs to be more transparency and a sense of getting the community involved so they can be involved in their students' career.
Thank you. Emily Masters.
Thank you. So I see the responsibilities of the board as being transparent with the public and being available to the public to ensure that I am using my voice on the board to truly represent those who live and go to school in my district. It's also fiscal responsibility. That's a very important function of the school board, is to allocate those dollars, but I think also to advocate for the additional funding that's needed for us to be able to be successful in our schools, and then ensuring the equitable allocation of those resources. And then of course to hire and oversee the work of a director of schools.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next question is for candidates in districts 5, 7, and 9. What are your top priorities and suggested reforms for improving education in MNPS overall, and specifically to advance equity, excellence, and access? And we'll start with Ms. Buggs.
Well, that's a lot to talk about in 45 seconds, but I think we can all agree and really understand now with the recent, pandemic and the other situations surrounding it, that budget advocacy, we've got to have increased resources. It is extremely hard to make sure that we implement programming and simultaneously, or even beforehand, train our educators to best support and implement it. If we don't have the resources to do that, we can't always depend on train the trainer models. We can't always depend on just modules and no follow-up professional development. So I think just increasing our budget advocacy and increasing resources. I also think, of course, engaging the community in any way. So making sure that we support community achieves and organizations like Communities in Schools, so that we have parent engagement, community involvement. We're wrapping our arms around or looking toward the philanthropic community.
Thank you very much,
their arms
Ms.
around us.
From District 7, Frida Player Peters. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think we have to ensure that we are fully outreaching to our parents, and that outreach reflects the community that we're reaching out to, that it fits the community in the best way possible. I think we have to ensure that we are uniformly implementing our policies in a fair and equitable way may look different ways to different parts of the community, but equity looks different in different ways, and make sure for equitable outcomes that's implemented. And I think also understand that we're managing a system that continues to grow and funding has continued to be cut over the decades.
Thank you. And I will turn to District 9, first starting with Russell and Bradbury.
Thanks, and thanks for asking. And again, going to be circling back to this crisis because I am mission focused. And we need to recognize that there is a digital divide. There was a digital divide before we had to go remote, and now there's a digital divide. So that falls into culture and equity and access all in one. So we need to acknowledge this crisis. We need to hit it in the bud. We're not going to go back to business as usual. And we need to focus on social emotional learning because I do not know how I'm going to get back into school in August. And I can imagine if that's how I'm feeling, almost every parent is feeling the same exact way. So again, keeping those parents engaged and happy and giving them their voice to be heard. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Abigail Tyler.
Well, my top priority was to provide a quality education to all of our students. We can't provide a quality education without quality. We have to show our teachers how much we value them with our actions, not just our words. And to that point, we have to give them the tools that they need to do their job effectively by funding the act of actually funding the system. Funding that should provide strong social and emotional learning supports and ongoing high quality professional development. There should be frequent and clear two-way communication between families and their schools to make sure that the schools are meeting the needs of our students and finding out how we can do better.
Thank you very much. The next question is for candidates in districts 3, 7, and 9. What does a highly effective and functioning school board look like to you? And let's start with Emily Masters.
Thank you. A highly effective and functioning school board is keeping the best interests of students and teachers in mind, focusing on equity in the entire school system, not concerned with any sort of special interests or pet projects, but truly concerned about the overall conditions in our schools for all students. We're student focused and we're working well together. And even if personalities don't always mesh, as long as we all share that common goal, and we're working towards a common vision with our director of schools together, then we can be a highly functioning school board.
Thank you very much. Brian Hubert. You're on mute.
You're still on mute.
Thank you.
You're still on mute. There we go.
A highly effective school board is one that puts aside petty differences and puts the children first. Too often we've seen a school board that is willing to draw lines in the sand, and they are going to take political stances against one another and just clog the progress of this board. I want it to go forward. I want positive change. That's why I'm running.
Thank you very much. Now, Frida Player Peters. What does a highly effective and functioning school board look like to you?
I think a highly effective functioning school board is one that we focus on policy, how policies are implemented, make sure we're implementing a vision, that vision's being implemented, and then also that we are making sure we're holding the administration accountable to the standards and the data that we have provided to make sure children are actually educated to the fullest extent that they can be.
Thank you. Let's go to Abigail Tyler now.
Well, I would say a highly effective and functioning school board always puts the students' needs first. It knows the history of the system and it has a clear vision for how to best move forward. And if there are disagreements on how to best move forward, then they can engage in a healthy professional debate where everybody is able to listen to one another and stay civil. I think you would work outside of meeting hours to educate yourself on the issues, to stay informed about what's going on in the schools and in your district, so that when you come to the meetings, you'll have as much to add for your constituents. You'll have their voice to add to the debate and whatever else we have to say.
Thank you. Bristelle Ann Bradbury, please.
Thanks. Guys, I'm doing this for one reason, because I'm an overachieving volunteer. And I think that everybody on the school board ultimately is, even if you're not aware, you want to call yourself that. People on the school board and the superintendent should be thought partners. They should be having open, two-way conversations that are honest. They should be celebrating really great successes and figuring out why it was success and what impact did that have on the children, the families, and the educators. We are representing a lot of people, over 100,000 people in the metro school system, and the board needs to be on board and focused only on the mission. Thanks.
Thank you very much. This next question is for candidates in District 5 and 1. A key responsibility of the school board is to hire and manage the director of schools. But over the past 5 years, MMPS has cycled through 3 directors and 2 interim directors. What do you think is the school board's role to ensure effective and stable leadership going forward? And let's start with Ms. Buggs.
Sure, thank you for that question. I think we've got to acknowledge and understand the difference between managing someone and being their boss. When you manage someone, you set them up for success, you make sure to hold them accountable, and you offer guidance, but you also help resource them and advocate for them, especially in a situation like our director, who is not elected, but is overseen by a group of elected officials. So I would say that's it, just making sure that we offer consistent feedback, that we evaluate, not just manage, and then use that, don't weaponize that evaluation, but use it to better implement resources, better implement strategy, and better align with the mission, vision, and core values that we've established. I think it's just constant communication, constant communication, and knowing our different roles.
Thank you. And for District 1 candidates, the order will be Dr. Gentry, Mr. Taylor, and Mr. Barlow. And again, the question is, what do you think is the school board's role to ensure effective and stable leadership going forward? Dr. Gentry.
Absolutely everything that Ms. Buggs said. It's impossible for us to move forward as a district if we're not willing to partner with and understand what the director needs to be successful. The director's success, Dr. Battle's success, is directly tied to the success of all of our schools, our students, our teachers, our families, and their amount of engagement and commitment to the district. And so it concerns me when people come to the board with the intent of being the challenger, of being the one that's going to, to push and in a way that doesn't bring the director along on that journey with us. We need to be thought partners for her and understanding what the needs are with our respective districts and how she can best align herself to those.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gentry. Mr. Taylor, please.
So I think just managing the director of schools as a board member is about providing them with timely information about what their community needs. You have to be involved and engaged in the community, working with parents as partners, working with the staff in the school buildings, as well as our students, so that you can ensure that our director of schools understands fully what your district needs, and then also supporting them in that way, and having a clear understanding of what our policies and procedures are, so that when we give suggestions and advice to the board, to the director of schools, that information is solid and it's fact-based upon the policies and procedures that we have in place to manage the director of schools. That way, the director of schools doesn't get in trouble making mistakes that we could have avoided if we had given them good correct information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Barlow.
So I certainly agree with what has already been stated, but I would add to that a part of the board's policy indicates that as a board member that you will work with the directors of school, meaning that one should not come combative with that individual. I think you have to look at that, the statement that says you are to manage. I agree with Ms. Buggs who referenced that you're not the boss, you're there to manage. So I think for me, it's a major experiment in collaboration that you've got to be able to get along with folks, and you got to be able to make sure that people have the information and the resources to do the job. And I think when you do that, then you will have a successful director of schools.
Thank you very much. The next question is for candidates in District 7, 9, and 3. Board members are responsible for adopting the annual budget to provide the necessary funding to enable the school system to carry out its functions. In this time of extremely tight resources, what are your thoughts on where efficiencies can be found and where limited dollars must be invested to produce the best results for all students? And let's start District 7 with Ms. Frida Player-Peters.
I think we found probably one of the last efficiency left in central office. We cut the central office budget by $1 million and did some restructuring there. But then also we really tried to make sure that we put all the resources we can back into the classroom. We cut the board's line item budget. And so at this point, we've been cutting over the past couple of years, just because in 2010, Metro School's budget was roughly about 49% of the Metro budget. Now into 2020, we're about in the low 40s, high 30s. So at that point, we've been cutting the Metro School budget over the past decade as much as we can. So at this point, efficiencies will have to be found elsewhere, just because we have tried every bit and reform central office as much as possible and cut the middleman as much as possible without affecting the classroom.
Thank you very much. The question again is, in this time of extremely tight resources, what are your thoughts on where efficiencies can be found and where limited dollars must be invested to produce the best results for students? And we'll go to candidates in District 9, starting with Russell and Bradbury.
Thanks. Before I get started, I just want to make sure everyone knows to go to my website if you want to hear more about my experiences cutting budgets and figuring out how to align the mission with a limited budget. Again, we're in crisis. It's not just Metro schools. It's not just Nashville. It's not Tennessee. It's the entire nation and the global society. So we need to all of us cut extra expenses. I mean, I've done it. I hope that you guys have done it in the last few months. I mean, this is uncertain times, but we need to always focus on people over profit. So in my family, I'm paying for piano lessons. And in the school board, we need to pay for great educators, support services, and professional development.
Thank you very much. And at this time, Abigail Tyler.
Well, I think I'm going to start with where I think the money should be spent. I think it should go to training for our teachers. I mean, they're going to need to fully understand how to use the new virtual system so that when school starts, we're not wasting any time. In addition, we have to provide ongoing and high quality trauma-informed professional development on social and emotional learning supports. I mean, if there was ever a time that our children needed guidance on how to deal with their big emotions, it's going to be now. And student who's overwhelmed or traumatized, they're not going to be able to learn. Their brain literally shuts down. So if we want our schools to do that job of teaching, then we have to address the social and emotional needs first. I will say the upside to not opening schools in August is that we might save on some basic costs to keep schools open, you know, electricity, that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go to candidates in District 3, starting with Brian Hubert.
I think we really need to reassess what we're spending at Bransford Avenue in central office. I know that they've done cuts there before, but there are plenty of six-figure salaries that this year may not make sense to have. We might need to reassess where they are focused at this point in time. What are we getting out of central office right now that couldn't be sent down to the local level? I want to give local admins more autonomy in where they spend their money, not because of some sweetheart deal that somebody made at Central. As far as these consolidations, I think we need to look at those. They are half full schools are just not efficient, but I don't want schools to get to a point where they are half full. So I think we need to reassess the local options in many areas and provide the support to make them great.
Thank you very much. Emily Masters.
Thank you. I mean, I think the only place left to look for efficiencies is just to take a really deep look at are there any expenses that aren't directly related to student services or to teacher attraction and retention. I mean, I don't know, we started the school year with 94 vacancies, so we clearly already need to be spending more money there. I mean, what it comes down to is, yeah, these are tough times, but it's been tough times for MMPS for many, many years. Even when we were in the midst of an economic boom in our state, being largely fed by Nashville, we weren't being effectively funded. So I think in addition to looking for efficiencies, we need to really be advocating as a board to get the funding that we need.
Yes, the next question is for candidates in districts 3 and 1. Too many of our graduates are not college ready, and growing number of MNPS schools are falling into the bottom 5% academically when compared to other schools in our state. What is the school board's role in holding the system accountable so that all students have the chance to succeed? Do you have a specific idea of what needs to be done now to improve our schools? We'll start with candidates in District 3 with Emily Masters.
Thank you. It boils down once again to equity and the equitable distribution of resources. Some students, some schools need more. They need more support. They need more resources. So we need to be, rather than having a one-size-fits-all solution, we really need to be focusing on student-centered learning, student-centered interventions, making sure that we have the wraparound services that are necessary for students to be capable of learning at the level that is necessary. We also need to introduce a lot more equity when it comes to the screening for our gifted and talented programs and our AP programs. We don't have a lot of equity in that, and we need to be attracting more diverse students into those.
We need to provide that autonomy.
Thank you very much.
Local administrators of these schools that are in the bottom 5% to give them the opportunity to better their school on not underneath some rigid guidelines. They know their students, they know their the teachers know their students. We need to give them the ability and the funds, the funding and support that they need to make things great. As far as what the students need themselves, wraparound services, student psychologists, guidance counselors, social workers, that's ones that are struggling, and get them back on track.
Thank you very much. And I will go to candidates in District 1. The order will be Mr. Taylor, Mr. Barlow, and Dr. Gentry. I'll repeat the question. What is the school board's role in holding the system accountable so that all students have the chance to succeed? And do you have specific ideas of what needs to be done now to improve our schools? Mr. Taylor.
So yes, of course, our school board is accountable for holding our administrators responsible for the outcomes that we set for them at the board level. However, we also have to ensure that they have the supports necessary to reach those outcomes. I believe that one of the ideas that I have is, of course, centered around family and community engagement. I believe that we have tons of community partners that are already working in our schools with our students, but we want to make those partnerships easier for the community to access the students and to provide them with the resources that they offer around ACT prep and college readiness and ensuring that they're completing the FAFSA on time. And so I'm appreciative of the community partners that we already have. And I just believe that we need to double down on that strategy and increase
Thank you very much.
partners have in schools.
Mr. Barlow.
So I think that part of the problem is that I believe in both principal and teacher autonomy, but I think we have to make sure that those autonomies are not being abused, and that we have to make sure that there are measures there all throughout the school year to make sure that whatever styles educators are using, whatever programs principals are pushing in the building, that those tools are in fact working to lift the students out of the holes and making sure they are in fact college ready. I think we also have to just deal with the fact, and the fact is there is an issue, you know, with how we fund the various sides of school, various sides of town. The schools on the various sides of town. There's an issue.
Thank you,
with
Mr.
equity.
Barlow. Dr. Gentry.
Yes. So what we have done is empowered our building level leaders to do exactly what has been said already. Our building level leaders are CEOs. They manage the student-based budgets. They create those opportunities for community partnerships. We have many a nonprofit community has gone to bat with us in this fight for equity and for providing resources at the point of need for our students. What the board does is continue to monitor that data, continue to look and challenge the director of schools to bring solutions, to bring programming, to bring relationships, larger district-wide partnerships to the table for us to allow our districts, schools to have access to those. And so, you know, we have to keep pushing on the equity issue and ensuring that we're putting now teachers in front of our students.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And this time we're going to take a quick break to do a rapid fire question. All candidates will receive it. And the question is, what book that you've read recently do you recommend to the audience here? And we'll start just in the order that we began. Mr. Barlow, what book do you recommend that you've read recently to the community?
The book that I've read recently that I would recommend would probably be I think of my book title, and I'm sitting at my desk and I don't have it with me. But I think One of the books that I think that would be good would be Carol Watkins Ali's Survival and Liberation, which will inspire and encourage you to do the kind of social justice work that's sometimes necessary in this type of job.
Thank you. Dr. Gentry?
I would actually have two. So I just finished rereading Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, and this book called Make Your Bed by a former Navy SEAL about accomplishing things every day.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
So I'm rereading Making the Unequal Metropolis, and I think that's a key for anybody here in Nashville to understand what has happened in the past and what is potentially taking place again in North Nashville, especially given the widening of Clarksville Highway.
Thank you. Mr. Hubert? And you're on mute.
Nonfiction, I would go with The Knowledge Gap, and then most recently I've read Lincoln and Pardo.
Thank you very much. Ms. Masters?
So I'm currently reading Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum, and then I typically read a fiction and a nonfiction together. I'm reading Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste King.
Thank you. Ms. Buggs?
Well, it is National Grade Level Reading Week, so I read the book Dreamers. It's a nonfiction about a young mother and her journey from Mexico with her son. And so I've been reading that to Christopher, and on my own, I've been reading Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's really not cliche. I really have been reading it because it's just a great read.
Thank you. Ms. Player Peters?
The last two books I read is Who Thought This Was a Good Idea by President Obama's scheduler. I can't think of her name, please forgive me. And then also Minimalism, so how to minimize things in your life during this COVID time to hopefully declutter my home.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bradbury?
I'm so glad you asked, because I want to do a book club, but I don't have time to read or start a book club. But I listened on tape to Dr. Ibram Kendi, and he partners with Jason Reynolds, who is a young adult author. And they write this beautiful book called Stamped. It's the young adult version of Dr. Ibram Kendi's, all about racism and the history. And it's, anyway, young adult version, everybody could digest, and I highly recommend it. But listen to it while you vacuum.
Thank you. Ms. Tyler?
Well, I just actually finished Educated by Tara Westover. I had to double check and make sure that was the author's name. And that was fabulous. And I loved Mr. Taylor's recommendation because that was going to be my second one, The Making of the Unequal Metropolis. I love that book. Ainsley Erickson wrote it. And it's all about how segregation has impacted our schools, desegregation in the 50s and how that's impacted the schools. And it goes into redlining and everything else behind it. And it uses Nashville as the case study. So you'll recognize these schools and you might even recognize some of these names. So there's a lot of history. It's kind of dense, but it's really informative and interesting.
Thank you very much to all of you. And again, if you're just joining us, this is a Nashville School Board Candidate Forum organized by Conexión Americas, the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, Nashville Now Great City, Great Schools Coalition, Nashville Propel, and the Nashville Public Education Foundation. I'm David Plazas from the Tennessean. I'm your moderator tonight. So we'll get back to the questions now. And this is for candidates in District 7, 9, and 5. There has been some controversy around the role of public charter schools, yet many of MMPS's best performing schools are charters. What is your opinion of the charter schools and what role should they play in the MMPS system? Ms. Frida Player Peters.
I believe charter schools have a very specific role to fulfill needs that cannot be filled by an MMPS overall school system that should be set by the school board of what those needs should be at the given time in an environment. Yes, there's good charter schools, there are also bad charter schools. I think it's a matter of making sure they have held to the same accountability as the school district has with regards to our taxpayers' dollars and the academic standards. So I believe that's the role of charter schools in MMPS.
And now from District 9, Ms. Tyler.
I think we need more transparency around our charter schools. The state has worked really hard to override every measure of accountability that the school boards voted in place, as well as created a law that stipulates charter schools must be fully funded before any money goes to metro schools. And I think that because of this, we can't afford to open any more charter schools at this time. We cannot financially bear that burden because all of that money, and we're already underfunded. I think that we need to get all of our schools under the same set of funding standards And I'd love to see an end of the year touch point as part of the accountability standards to help pinpoint the charter schools who might release students to their zone schools right before state testing. But despite some of my frustration with charter school accountability, I don't think we need to go in and shut them down if they are doing right by their students and following the accountability rules.
Thank you. Ms. Bradbury.
Thanks for asking. And I know everyone in my district is so excited to hear my answer. I think it's a disservice to generalize charter schools. The records will show us that the results are stunningly uneven, as in any school, as you'll remember. And they are not affecting white middle-class people. So it makes more sense why they have been up again and again against barriers. Again, I do think that they are bringing some equitable results and giving families the ultimate choice. And as we all know, especially during this crisis, families know best. I do not feel we should open any more schools at the time because we're in crisis and we're out of money. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Buggs?
Yes, thank you for that question. So I actually started my career at our very first charter school, Smithson Craighead, the middle school. And although I didn't have the best experience there with professional development, I did see that they were making great strides and had a beautiful vision. But what I do think is that sometimes the narrative around, or the conversations around charter schools, AKA versus, or, you know, in quotations, versus traditional schools, is a bit more combative than I would like for it to be. It should be very collaborative. It should be that charter schools are pockets of innovation, because just like there are some charter schools that are level 5 and are reward schools, there are certainly some traditional schools that perform at the same level. In reverse, though, there are some charter schools that are level 1s and that are not meeting the needs of our students, just like there are some traditional schools that are not. So I believe charters are just part of our portfolio. They should be looked at as just other choice schools.
Thank you very much. Our next question is for candidates in districts 9 and 1. Past MMPS boards have been criticized for internal turmoil and public division. What do school board members need to do to ensure the board stays focused on student achievement? And let's start with Ms. Bradbury.
This is my timer too. Thanks. I think it's the same thing that we're on a team. We're doing this for the greater good, and we're representing children, educators, families, and employees. So here we spent such an heavily invested time and process and recruitment to try to get the absolute best leader. And we have one now. So we need to just continue to amplify all voices in these conversations and make sure that successes are celebrated and direct conversations happen for challenges. But again, we're better together. So we need to eliminate the personal discord and be friends.
Thank you. Ms. Tyler?
I think incorporating examples of student success at the beginning of every meeting really helps center that student achievement. And it reminds us why we're here. And as for the turmoil and the public division, it's really no different than any teacher expects from his or her classroom. I mean, practice civility with one another. You can disagree without being ugly or cruel. And if you're having discussions, then you need to actually listen carefully to what the other person is saying and respond thoughtfully. I mean, after all, we're on the same team. We all want the same goal. We want to provide the best educational experience possible.
Thank you very much. And next we'll go to District 1 candidates. The order will be Mr. Barlow, Dr. Gentry, and Mr. Taylor. And the question again, what do school board members need to do to ensure that the board stays focused on student achievement? Mr. Barlow.
Well, the main thing is I see myself as a collaborative leader. And so I believe first and foremost, you have to learn to, when it's time to disagree, but don't become disagreeable. And then I think also, even though you disagree with a person on something, move past that and try to find those areas where you agree so that this much needed work can continue to move forward. And then along with that, I think you have to remember why you came to this position. And that is to make sure that every child in every school has a successful education every day. And I think if you do that, then the board will function just fine.
Thank you. Dr. Gentry?
Yeah, it may come as a surprise to people, but we actually have a calendar and a process that is actually documented that would require us to stay focused on those issues that directly affect student outcomes and achievement. I think it's when we step outside of those areas of responsibility and start to dabble into the operational decisions of the district and express our displeasure with choices that the people that we've hired and empowered and expect to make those kinds of decisions when we make them, and we have personal opinions about that. And so it's just about a matter of a way of ensuring that we're using the data to guide those decisions. And unfortunately, it is personal. It's about children. So it's definitely personal for each and every one of us that sits at that table, but ensuring that we're having data-driven discussions that are focused on our ability to help provide guidance and not make those operational level decisions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor?
I agree with all of the previous statements. And then just to add that really we do need to refocus on what it says in the board operating manual. I think that we've gotten away from that at times, and we haven't been able to hold one another accountable to ensure that that we're acting in an ethical way, that there's transparency amongst the board members, and that the work remains focused on the children. I would also like to revisit the idea of having a student board member in the boardroom there, so that we can ensure that student voice is heard and that the students are at the table, and hopefully people will emulate the behavior that they would hope to see in our students, and that would give them another motivating incentive. As a mediator, I do that with child support cases.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next question is for candidates in districts 3, 5, and 7. How can school board members improve transparency and keep families and community members better informed and engaged? And let's start with Mr. Hubert in District 3. And you're still, oh, there we go.
Board members need to be able to utilize all of the social media outlets. I think that the transparency of the board right now is not terrible, because all of the meetings are available as soon as they happen live. On video, it's nicer to see it in person than it is to see the remote ones right now. But we also need help from the media to push the issues. And forums like this are very, very helpful, but it needs to be front page news when the school board does something, not third page news, and needs to be less sensational in the media. So I would say the board can do their part by using their own outlets, but I'd also like more help from the local media.
Thank you very much. Ms. Masters.
Thank you. So I think we should establish some really accessible mechanisms for community response. Surveys, town hall style meetings, both before we're making really important decisions and after, so that we can sort of assess the response to that. I also think the board needs to be thoroughly familiarized with sunshine laws and you know what we can and can't do as board members, just to be educated, especially for newer board members, to be sure that we're going in with an awareness of how we can best be transparent. And I think that we should also institutionalize parent involvement in a much bigger way, much as with our most successful PTO organizations, where parents know that they are welcome and that their voices are going to be heard. And that's something that we could do through the mechanisms I described.
Let's go to District 5, Ms. Buggs.
Sure, thank you for that. I think accessibility makes transparency very easy to accomplish. You know, it just making sure that parents and community members know who you are, know how to get in touch with you. For the first 3 years of my term, I had I would walk our neighborhoods on Saturdays just to knock on doors, really just pick a couple of streets, walk some doors and knock on them, tell parents about what was going on. I also did a MailChimp, but I realized that social media really was where I got the bulk of my following. So just engaging on social media in a way that meets all demographics. You know, I realized that with MLK's SGA and Hume Fogg's SGA, they wanted me to stream live on Instagram. So I focused on Instagram with them, Facebook for some of my other constituents. And then,
thank you very much, Ms. Buggs.
Thank you.
Ms. Player-Peters, District 7.
Yes, I think one thing, I think people will be surprised. Metro Schools does not have the infrastructure for community outreach compared to the mayor's office and especially Metro Council for the same size of people we represent, as even though we're 9 and the Metro Council is 40. Metro Council staff is roughly of 10 people. The mayor's staff obviously of 20, 30 people, and we have a staff of 2. And we also don't have Franklin privileges, and we do not have the financial resources compared to Metro Council or the mayor's office. So part of that transparency is we literally do not have the institutional resources as an office and the financial resources to do the same level of outreach as compared to our counterparts on the Metro Council and the mayor's office. And even on the state level, with their state house and state reps, they have franking privileges. We do not as school board members. So that hinders the way we—
Thank you very much. The next question is for candidates in districts 1 and 3. And the question is, what is your view on the role of annual assessments related to system accountability and in evaluating the progress of schools, classrooms, and teachers? And the order for District 1 will be Dr. Gentry, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Barlow. And again, the question is, what is your view on the role of annual assessments related to system accountability and in evaluating the progress of schools, classrooms, and teachers? Dr. Gentry.
Until we get them right and they can be consistently implemented, accessed, I don't think that they have a place in our school system. They provide more stress than they do support. We need assessments that can be informative and formative for our students and our building level personnel so that they can make decisions about how to move our students forward academically. We haven't had annual assessments that have allowed us to do that in quite some time. And so it's unfair to put them in the critical path to judge our school's performance, to judge our teachers' performance, and actually leverage those in such a way that's more punitive when it's not presented to us in a way and accessible in a way that they can be leveraged for what they should be leveraged for. And that is monitoring the progress of our students and helping the teachers decide how to move forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gentry. Mr. Taylor.
The role of the annual is to try to provide some sense of accountability. Unfortunately, it has failed to be able to do that. To implement those assessments with any type of fidelity over the past few years. And so it's not providing us with the information that we would need in order to make sure that our system is accountable. I think that we need to revisit how we hold folks accountable and what assessments we use and what are the methods that we use to hold them accountable. But I agree that the annual assessments that we have in place right now are not getting the job done, and we need to review what it is that we're going to do in the future to ensure that we're reaching outcomes that we're looking for in our classrooms every day.
Thank you. Mr. Barlow?
So I agree with what has already been said, but I think along with that, the main issue is that you have tools and instruments that will give you the indicators for classroom educators that, hey, I need to go in a different direction with this particular student. You also have to have those indicators that tell a particular student, maybe here's where you've had some learning loss and this is the gap that you've got to close. And so I think also when we look at how that system is applied to teachers as a whole and schools as a whole, I don't really think it's oftentimes fair, because when you try to say that someone is a 1 or a 2, and when 5 is your highest, no one wants to be there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barlow. And the question again for the District 3 candidates, what is your view on the role of annual assessments related to system accountability and in evaluating the progress of schools, classrooms, and teachers? And we'll start with Ms. Masters.
Thank you. So standardized achievement tests aren't designed to test the effectiveness of teachers or of a school system. They actually put the power into the hands of the testing company rather than in the hands of the school leaders. They offer incentivization over the rewards of just a job well done. The way that we are using them is not providing the effects that we need. We're using them to help us determine the effectiveness of teachers, which is absolutely ridiculous to judge the effectiveness of a teacher based on how a student does on one of these biased standardized achievement tests. So I think we need to completely rethink the way that we are testing achievement in our district.
Very much. Mr. Hubert.
I think we've all agreed that the current metrics are just not effective in judging a teacher. I do think that there needs, or a school for that matter, there needs to be a metric that we can find. And I will say that with an asterisk in that this is not the year to find it. This year is going to be completely different than anything we've ever seen. So we cannot even consider comparing teachers this year's performance to anything in the past, because it's an off year for us as far as what we're about to see. And I think that it's important that going forward, when school normalizes, that we do consider metrics that would help us compare apples to apples. But currently, yes, it is not there.
Thank you very much. The next question is for candidates in districts 5, 7, and 9. With early school closings this past spring due to COVID-19 and the uncertainties heading into the fall, what ideas do you have to urgently and immediately assess and address the likely learning loss that students have experienced and may continue to experience as we wrestle with this pandemic? And again, it's a learning loss question. We'll start with Ms. Buggs.
Thank you for that. So I think we must urgently check in on our students. I think we are mostly concerned with their safety, their health and well-being right now. So once we've done that, once we've fed them and we've talked to them and we've made sure that the trauma they experienced, because it was trauma in March, is being dealt with. As we're doing that, we can be provide or offering summative assessments that just give us that gives us a check-in with them, that, you know, as soon as they log in, that, you know, we do some do now works, some bell ringers, some of those very basic 3-question assessments that let you know what they retained and what they didn't. And I think urging and encouraging and supporting teachers to really use standards-based pre-assessments that won't be weaponized against the student, but that will allow them to understand where they need to go with their instruction.
Thank you very much. Ms. Player Peters.
I agree with what Ms. Buggs said about the social emotional learning, but then also do kind of a basic pre-test, kind of a way we grew up, you know, at least I grew up in school, that you do a basic pre-test with some previous grade information, see what they retained, what they didn't, and then we want from there to make sure we reinforce the fundamentals and make sure those fundamentals be able to be a launching pad to catch up to the loss that we have over the next hopefully 9 months as we move through this pandemic.
Thank you. And again, the question is, what ideas do you have to urgently and immediately assess and address the likely learning loss that students have experienced and may continue to experience as we wrestle with this pandemic? And the next is for District 9 candidates. Ms. Tyler.
Well, I've been researching the Florida Virtual School, the online platform that we're getting ready to use. And I've also seeked out information from families who have used it before. And I've heard really good things about their onboarding process, that it's very thorough. It really sets the kids up so that you know exactly where they are and where they're missing. And so I think that once we have that individual learning assessment, that our teachers are going to be able to create those personalized learning experiences to address the definitely inevitable learning loss that we've already had. And in addition, Dr. Battle has promised to assess the traumatic experiences that they may have, that COVID may have had. And so we're going to have to use that to shape how we move forward as well.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bradbury.
Thanks. It's the topic of the night, the topic of the season. And I love that everyone is acknowledging that this is a disruption and that, again, we cannot resume business as usual because of the societal storm pattern. We need to play off our strengths. Right now, Dr. Battle and the team have presented an amazing plan of continuity. We need to understand that no human knows any better than any other human what to do, and none of us are more right or more wrong. We're all imperfect. And right now on Facebook, there is a really awesome, innovative, connecting group, and I encourage all parents to get on it. It's called No Judgment Zone, Solutions in the COVID-Free World. And that's a great strength, that we have parents that really care. So listen to them.
Thank you very much. And just a friendly reminder to our panelists that if you have any sounds or phones, please put them on mute. And if you have noises in the background, please put yourself on mute. I'm sorry for the disruption to the audience. But again, thank you very much again. And we're about to hit a rapid fire question. I'm going to ask each of you, and I'm going to go from District 9 all the way to District 1, so in reverse order from the last time. What was your favorite subject in school and why? And let's start with Ms. Tyler.
I loved English. I love reading. I was also able to take a class my senior year that was poetry, and it was about how to take the language apart and parse it and put it back together again in a way that was meaningful and emotional, but still reached out to people and gave them maybe information about something. So I loved English, and I loved that poetry class that I was able to take.
Thank you. Ms. Bradbury?
I love everything about school, but I have to say that like second grade, those really, really role modeling teachers that, you know, you idolize and you just think they can do no wrong. That's definitely my favorite part about school, and talking to new friends.
Thank you. Ms. Player Peters.
Government, of course. What else? That's the best subject ever.
Thank you very much. Ms. Buggs.
It was math. I have a physics degree, but it was because of math. Sorry about that music in the background.
No, it's all right. Ms. Masters.
So I have a master's degree in English, so definitely always anything having to do with literature and writing. But also, I was very into drama in high school. Voted most dramatic as my senior superlative, not for that reason, but for the whole like acting on the stage reason. So I'm very passionate about the arts in our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert.
History, that's what I got my degree in, and a lot of that was based on an AP history course I took at Hunter's Lane. And we had to read People's History of the United States, and that did kind of open my eyes to some of the injustices that have happened, and hopefully we can learn from our mistakes.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
All of the sciences, but biology was my favorite. I had the most wonderful biology teacher, and he just really made an impact on my life that spurred me on to become a biology major and earn my degree in biology at Fisk.
Thank you. Dr. Gentry?
All things math and science, and English. I minored in English. So I majored in physics, engineering, and minored in English. So that's my jam.
Thank you. Mr. Barlow?
For me, it's history, because history to me informs you and it challenges you to be a better you, and you learn wonderful things like the first public park for African Americans is right in this town. And so I think for me, and it changed maybe in college, but basically history, because I like learning, and I like knowing those things that, hey, you don't want to repeat this and go forward. And so I like that kind of learning, and history seems to do that for me.
Very good. Thank you very much for sharing your favorite subjects with the audience. The next question is for candidates in Districts 1 and 5, and the order for District 1 will be Mr. Taylor, Mr. Barlow, and Dr. Gentry. And then, of course, we'll have Ms. Buggs in District 5. The question is this: through initiatives like the Academies of Nashville or Community Achieves, MNPS has committed community and business partnerships. How can the district continue to strengthen these partnerships, and what opportunities do you see for bringing in new community partners? And again, District 1 with Mr. Taylor.
Right. I think that those are wonderful partnerships. I love the Community Achieves model, which also has an accountability piece in it that I don't think all people are aware of, but they assess whether or not that actual community partnership is achieving the goals that are set at the beginning of the school year. And I think that we need to continue programs like that. Just an idea that we've had in talking to the community is having almost like an adopt a school model, where you do similar to Adopt a Highway. You have business partners come in, adopt a school, and that's the school that their employees and other partnerships that they have come in and focus on helping us to turn around the issues that we see every day in those buildings. And so I think that's a creative idea that comes from the community that I would like to see more of and be supportive of in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Barlow?
So I personally believe that is one of the best things we have going in Metro Public Schools. I spend a lot of time telling parents that above all things, if you put your child in the right academy, your child is going to excel. Even if someone is trying to tell you the school is not excelling as a whole, your individual child will have success. And I think we got to, I think the city, the state, and our schools have to be understand that those children also need those certificates that will help them when they're doing these kind of partnerships. And I think we just got to keep reaching out to the various industries that are in our town to make sure that they are on board, because after all, I believe very much in the method of grow your own, which means work with your own people so that you can use them in your workforce.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gentry.
Both excellent programs. We definitely need to expand the Community Achieves initiatives and make them available to more of our schools, and bringing in those partnerships and those wraparound services through that program. And with the academies, it really, we need to make sure that we're putting a lens of equity on it so that we have academy opportunities in all schools that are viable, that are vital to the future of the city and give students really great opportunities. At Whites Creek, we're bringing in a public service academy with some stellar graduates from that school to expand and make more relevant and more currently relevant opportunities for students to engage through the academies model. So we just need to make sure we keep an equity lens on both of those so that we're putting them where they're needed and that we're giving vital and relevant opportunities to our students.
Thank you very much. And the question again is, how can the district continue to strengthen partnerships, and what opportunities do you see for bringing in new community partners? And this is for Ms. Bugs in District 5.
Sure. So I think I love the idea that Nashville seems to be moving and becoming more of a collective impact city, where we are really leaning on the community to be thought partners with us, as well as donating their time, their talent, and their treasure. So with that in mind, I think continuing to lean on some of our nonprofit partners and some of our philanthropic community members, like communities and schools that partners with Community Achieves, and making sure that there's alignment there, making sure that they're maximizing the benefits for our students. I also have been thinking about just strengthening alumni and parent relationships, making sure that we built a culture in MNPS where we know how to go out and talk about the good things or even the needs of our schools in a very authentic way, and then making sure that alum are not just surveyed to see what they could have done better or what could have happened that was more appropriate for them, but also tapping into them as a resource to come back. And you know, I could go to MLK and speak to some government groups and maybe have another little freedom.
Thank you very much. Now this next question is a related question for districts 3, 7, and 9 candidates. To expand on the previous question about partnerships, what specific strategies or methods do you wish to see implemented to ensure that English language students and students with disabilities receive equal access to high quality learning environments and services if parents choose the virtual learning options? And again, we're going to start with District 3 with Mr. Hubert.
I think that there needs to be a push of the wraparound services. We're going to have to go out to houses. We're going to have to visit the students in their location to establish whether or not they're in a situation that remote learning is feasible. We're going to have to reach out to community partners, community centers, places that can facilitate students that aren't able to effectively remotely learn, and be able to have them in a situation where they can benefit from this remote learning and still maintain a safe environment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Masters.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to rely on trusted community partnerships and direct outreach to the students that are affected. I have 20 years of experience working with nonprofit organizations here in Nashville, mainly in fundraising. And so I have a really high level of awareness of the charitable and philanthropic community here in Nashville. And I would like to work on the board to make and create new connections so that we are working with the partners who can help us assess what it is we need to get out to these families with very specific needs. And then of course, the direct outreach to the families as well, making sure that we're overcoming language barriers when we're doing communications with different families.
Thank you very much, Masters. Ms. Player Peters.
I think first on the disability side, I think first we have to make sure that we truly use the resources leveraged by other government agencies and other nonprofit agencies that and tap into CARES Fund, Medicaid, Medicare to make sure students have access to the support staff they need to make sure they can be able to do the physical, intellectual, and emotional needs to make sure they can be educated in a fair and equitable environment, to make sure we give them the wraparound resources that are available outside of the traditional school system, and also lean on some of our business community that does international business to understand this is how you communicate and how the benefits of being bilingual can really work and to speed up be able to learn English in a proficient manner.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Bradbury in District 9.
Thanks. Again, I think we need to acknowledge the crisis, that no one is better than any other person in this feeling of uncertainty and worry and anxiety. And I want to applaud all the parents out there, especially the working parents. I don't know how we've survived the last 4 months, but we've done it and we're going to keep doing it. And throwing special needs into the bucket does increase the challenges, but we need to support these families, and we need to make sure that every voice is heard, even from behind a mask, that we're doing the best we can with what we've got. Stay patient, stay resilient, stay calm, families, and keep supporting our schools.
Thank you. Ms. Tyler.
Well, I think our exceptional education department needs to make sure that it's having clear, frequent communication with parents, with community partners. And obviously, I know that Metro's already worked hard to make sure that they're translating everything into all the different languages that we have, because there are many. And I think that so far we've done a good job of remembering that and trying to make sure that we're facilitating that on the front end before we start to reach out, so that we already have what we need to give to them so they can understand it. As far as the physical therapy piece or the piece where you have to actually work person to person, that's my biggest concern. And I think we are going to have to use some CARES Act dollars because we don't have any left in our budget. So we're really going to have to tap into that fund to see what we can do.
Thank you very much. This next question is for candidates in districts 5 and 1. And this goes directly to the heart of conversations around gentrification and displacement. What are the concerns that you're hearing most from parents, and especially in areas where students are having to be displaced from one school to another? And I'd like to start with Ms. Buggs.
So yes, the biggest concern is parents feeling comfortable with getting access to technology. Like, we finally met the need of a laptop. For some, we're meeting the need of a hotspot. But what if parents still don't feel comfortable or don't know how to monitor their children? Or support their learning. Not only that, but with the transient nature of many of our families, and with compounding that with the pandemic and recent tornadoes, I think there's this fear about what curriculum will look like and what happens when my child has to register in another part of the city. And I think it's been wonderful that MNPS administration has developed a standard, or it adopted a standard curriculum, so that whatever's happening in 7th grade math at one school is happening in the 7th grade math classroom across the district in another school. So I think that's been the biggest concern so far.
Thank you. And we'll go to District 1 candidates, and the order will be Mr. Barlow, Dr. Gentry, and Mr. Taylor. And again, this is questions concerning gentrification, displacement in these neighborhood schools. And again, Mr. Barlow.
So a lot of the concern is being just the abruptness of which students are going to be displaced because of our school closures, and some persons feeling that there was not enough transparency involved. But as I've told the district often, they do put out a lot of information. You get information through the emails. You sometimes get an all call, but still somehow parents still don't seem to get connected with the information sometimes that's going on. And so with that being said, we've got to do something about the inequities that exist in District 1. And that means just putting some funds over there so that those schools can have the proper resources.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gentry? You're on mute.
What's happening in our neighborhoods is really making it difficult for us to keep the enrollment where it needs to be for us to keep our schools open. And so that is definitely a concern. And the bigger concern as a result of that is we're losing community schools. And so what we're looking to do is to make sure we keep those buildings as resources within the district, because the ultimate goal is that we knock it out of the park with the hard decisions that we've had to make. Consolidating resources and putting more resources at the point of need for those students so that we can bring families back into those communities and bring students back into those buildings. But we need a larger community effort to help us to better manage this gentrification that's going on so that our families aren't displaced at such a disparate rate.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
So as someone who's been active in the community and speaking with parents on a regular basis, what I'm hearing from them is that they just want more communication. Right now, we don't have a place that we can go to for regular information about what's going on in our schools for District 1. Many parents felt as though they did not get enough information about the school closures in advance. And for us to continue on as if we had conversations with them and so forth is disingenuous. And I think parents are disappointed by that and have lost trust in the ability of the school system to do right by them and their children. I think that we need to create better communication to ensure that people understand what is going on in our community around gentrification and what it looks like when you start closing schools in a community that is already under-resourced.
This next question is a rapid fire question for all candidates. And we're going to start with District 3 candidates and end with District 1. What's one thing that non-MNPS parents or people who don't have children can do to help MNPS? And we'll start with District 3 with Brian Hubert first.
Just supporting the tax raises that may be difficult to swallow, but they're the funding of this school system. So being able to also, if you are in the community and you own a business, getting involved in sponsoring that school.
Thank you very much. Ms. Masters?
Get involved. I was volunteering in MNPS before I had kids of my own. And as a business owner for 10 years, I I sent dance instructors into schools and paid them out of their salaries to go and offer those opportunities. So there's so many unique and interesting ways that we can get involved, get in the schools, and do exciting things with students.
Thank you. And we'll go to Ms. Buggs in District 5. Again, what's one thing that non-parents can do to help MMPS?
We are always looking for support through volunteerism. If you are able to give of your time, talent, or treasure, please feel free to do that. Reach out to your community achieve site director, your school board member, or just walk into your area. Well, don't walk into your area of school. Reach out to your principal, and they can find, they can place you somewhere.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Buggs. And District 7, Frida Player Peters.
For school board, I don't have kids and I'm on the school board. So just because you don't have a kid does not mean you can't give by actually giving your talent to actually running for office.
Thank you. Ms. Bradbury in District 9.
Thanks. Yeah, if you live in the district and you live in the city of Nashville, support the public schools. If you don't know how the reputation of your local school is, go to the school and find out, or ask your board rep for their take on it, because we need to cheerlead for public schools, and everybody needs to get on board.
Thank you very much. Ms. Tyler in District 9.
I think just making sure that we're getting involved, like everybody has already said. There's so many ways you can be used in a school. Trust me, we will find a place for you. We will find a way to get you helping our students. So just make yourself available. And once you know what's happening in our schools, I think that's going to really start to help change other things too.
Thank you. And the question again is, what's one thing that non-parents can do at MPS can do to help Metro Nashville Public Schools? We'll finish with District 1 candidates. Mr. Barlow.
So this state already, I think Mr. Taylor mentioned it about adopt the schools. My fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, we've been a part of that, and we've adopted a school, and so that tends to help. And then, as well as being, if you can get a part of these various mentoring groups that are around the city, so that you can come in and be a positive role model for our students. And then just coming in with your time, talents, and treasures to support the PTOs. I've been a PTO president in a number of schools. I think those kinds of initiatives you can help with.
Thank you, Dr. Gentry.
Volunteer in the schools. If you're at your company, see how your company is currently supporting public education. I know HCA has hands in several of our schools across the district. Not only just running for local office on the school board, but running for council, getting involved with the legislator, advocating at every level of government when it comes to funding, when it comes to policies that will allow us to do what's best for the students across the district. So there's a place and a voice opportunity for everyone, regardless of your parental status.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor.
Of course, I agree with everybody's comments. I think we can't have enough folks in the schools. Like we said before, it is an all hands on deck type of situation, especially in District 1. I think when we saw the tornado come through, the entire city came together to support the efforts to rebuild Nashville. And I think that we need to do the same thing in District 1. It's time for us to focus all of our efforts as a community to support those children that have been neglected for so long on this side of town. I also think that the school system needs to revisit their family and community engagement policy to ensure that every school has a plan for volunteers once they come into the building. So if a school doesn't perhaps have community achieves, that school will still have a plan so that when a volunteer shows up, we can know exactly where to send that volunteer. That volunteer needs to go to class 103 to help Mrs. Smith take students to lunch. Those are the types of things that I hope to be able to accomplish on the board. And the fourth that I think we need right now is we're transitioning into this new cycle that we have going on with distance learning and then potentially coming back to school and hybrid learning and so forth.
Thank you very much. And now, given the time, this will likely be our last question, and it'll be for all the candidates. School reopenings are happening differently in every single county across Tennessee and throughout the country. MMPS is not starting on campus in August. Tell us a little bit about what the ideal reopening, given the conditions that we're living in right now, would be for you if you had that decision-making authority. And let's start with District 1 candidates with Mr. Barlow.
So for me, I think I would do what's being done right now. I think I would select to open virtual mode just because we, our sorority sister mine said that, you can always catch up a child's learning, but you can't teach a dead child. And that was just putting it plainly. So I think we got to keep these students safe. We have a lot of our special needs populations. We got a lot of people dealing with underlying issues. So we got to keep folks safe. So I think starting virtually, and I think the spring did give us a good learning curve to see some things we need to tweak. And so I think to do what we're doing now is best and to assess those educators as well that have underlying issues to make sure that they can stay virtual as necessary.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gentry?
I think the plan that we put forth is the best plan that we could come up with the resources that we have. We're focusing the first 20 days on social and emotional needs of our students. We're leveraging Florida Virtual School software, a proven piece of software that we've been using for decades in the district already, that people are familiar with, to do those assessments and to now start giving students work that's going to be measured towards their progress in school. We've got some hurdles to overcome when it comes to funding for meals, but that's another opportunity for advocacy with the state. We need our CEP dollars back so that we continue to provide meals for those students who need it. My bigger concern is the other needs that students have that are provided when we're face-to-face. How do we still get there? How do we still put eyes on a student to make sure that their other needs are being met as well?
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor.
I think that I would do similar to what our amazing leader, Dr. Battle, has done. I am so glad that she is running things right now because she's providing us with some structure that we've needed for a while. And I think that her leadership will allow us to continue forward in a way that's going to be productive for our students. I also would just continue with community engagement, engaging parents, engaging the students, making sure that their needs are met on a regular basis. And then as a public health director in my past life, I'm always going to follow CDC guidelines and make sure that we're doing what's safe and is going to allow our students to return safely, not just with their physical health, but also their emotional health. I think that one of the things we have to be aware of is moving into this new paradigm that we have is.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hubert in District 3.
I agree with a lot of what's said. I think we need to follow what Dr. Battle's doing right now. I really hope that we stay the course and we don't cave to pressure from a governor or a president or a mayor. I really do think we need to make sure that going back is going to be safe. In the meantime, we need to focus on identifying the technological gap, getting the computers out to the right students, getting the training out there, making sure that students that need supervision get supervision. We also need to work within what we can do as parents. And I know one thing that I've done with my children, with my daughters, is find pods or what I call remote pooling, and just groups of 3 or 4 friends that can learn together at the same grade level and make the best of this situation and provide some sanity to them. But stay the course.
Thank you very much. Ms. Masters in District 3.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we just, I think we have a great plan. We have a great director of schools in place, and we're headed in the right direction. I think it's just really important to remember that when we're talking about safety, we're also talking about the mental health and well-being of all of our students and teachers and families. And we need to just be sure that we are putting the emotional supports in place that are necessary, and then work on the outreach for wraparound services like food distribution when we do decide to return to school, which should not be until the number of cases and the number of infections is way down and our contact tracing is way up. But at that point, when we do return to school, we need to follow all CDC guidelines. And we also need to be aware that some students and teachers who are in high-risk populations may need to continue learning virtually for a while.
Thank you very much. District 5, Ms. Buggs.
Yes, thank you. So I agree that this is the most feasible, most efficient, most appropriate plan we could have developed. I think we've already thought about all the different types of exceptional needs our students will have, or our students do have. So we have the continuous learning, individualized plans that we are developing, principals, teachers, parapros, other professionals like occupational therapists, and they're planning with families as we speak. So ideally what this would look like is, the community. I cannot stress it enough. The community stepping in and leaning into us more, offering any kind of supports, opening up their nonprofit spaces or their churches to make sure that small pods, as was mentioned earlier, that those are made feasible, making sure that we're connecting students in the same grade levels or of similar achievement so far, making sure that they have touch points.
Thank you very much. In District 7, Ms. Frida Player-Peters.
Ditto what everyone said, but most importantly, when the spread is less than 1-to-1 person and there's a continual decrease over 7 days, ideally 14, as Dr. Fauci has, that we have cases go down and the hospital rates not going up. Until we get that 1-to-1 spread, that spread 1-to-1 lower, I think that's when we feel safe for our children to come back into schools. So as my PSA, if you do not want your kids to spend the winter with you, wear your mask, please, so we can educate our children in the ideal way.
Thank you very much. Now to District 9 candidates, Russell and Bradbury.
Rita, I'm on board. Everybody wear your mask, okay? This is a crisis and it's bigger than COVID. Again, the state of our nation is in crisis and we all need to pause. We need to remember that we're all human and that all of our children have been impacted by this. And for all of our children, this is a bit of trauma. So I encourage everyone to stay connected, to stay creative, and to stay compassionate. Play upon your strengths, keep talking, get support. And you wanna know what? You've gotta vote. You gotta vote on August 6th, and you've gotta vote again in November, and get some real news. Guys, read your own news. So get on board, head to my website later. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And again, District 9, Abigail Tyler.
Like everybody else has said, I think that we have a great plan in place right now, and we need to make sure that we follow it through. I especially love the social and emotional piece to it. I think it is so necessary for us to be able to do any sort of learning. We have to take care of the trauma that has been inflicted on all of our students. And then I think whenever we get to that 1-to-1 spread that Ms. Player Peters was talking about, that if we're going back to school, we have the PPE for the students, we have, and the teachers and the staff, and that we're making sure that we're actually making it the most safe possible way that we can get back together so that we're not going to then just turn around and have to go right back home again.
Thank you very much. Again, I want to thank the candidates here who have given up their time this hour and a half today. Again, if you want to wave when I call on you, in District 1, Barry Barlow. District 1, Dr. Sharon Gentry. District 1, Robert Taylor. District 3, Brian Hubert. District 3, Emily Masters. District 5, Christian Buggs. District 7, Frida Player Peters. District 9, Russell Ann Bradbury. District 9, Abigail Tyler. Again, I want to thank also the audience here who has been watching diligently. And I want to thank those who made this forum successful and possible, including Conexión Americas, the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, the Nashville Now Great City, Great Schools Coalition, Nashville Propel, and the National Public Education Foundation. You may be watching this directly on your Zoom link or on the Tennesseans website, YouTube page, or Facebook page, and these will be available for replay. And to emphasize the message, please remember to vote. Early voting starts this Friday, July 17th, and goes for a 2-week period. You can also ask your Elections Commission, the Davidson County Elections Commission, for an absentee ballot at this time without any excuse if you're concerned about your health. But the most important thing is to vote by August 6th. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Good night, candidates. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Happy anniversary, Ajua. I love you.